One. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the BigMx Radio podcast. This episode is brought to you by Moose Racing, Race Tech Suspension and Engines, as well as Luxon MX. Let's be honest, it's been a while since you pulled the suspension off of your motorcycle. Winter is absolutely here unless you live in the sunny state of Florida, where you're probably able to ride your motorcycle. But up here in Canada, that's not the case. So unbolt your suspension, figure out where your closest Race Tech service center is, get it dialed in for your weight and or speed, and you'll be you'll get back to mid-season form just a little bit quicker thanks to our friends over at Race Tech. We thank Checkers and everybody over at Race Tech for supporting this podcast. Same thing with Luxon MX. Amazing engineers, they make amazing product, and that's why they've been a part of BigMx Radio for 5 years now. I am your host, Brad Gebhardt, but with me on the line, a guy who should know better than come back to these parts, but he's like, I'm like a moth to the flame. And it's none other than Kyle Wolfe, the Wolf Man. How's it going?
Man, it is good. I'm a little bit warmer than you are. I'm back up in Ohio, but it's definitely warmer than up in Canada right now.
Oh, the weather outside is certainly frightful, but yeah, we're gonna have a white Christmas. But before we get to that, today or this evening is a very special. It's always a very special edition or episode of the podcast every single year. We're gonna break down the 450 class for Monster Energy Supercross, all of the speculation, all of the storylines. It all comes down to this podcast here and sort of weighing in. And one of the things that I am most excited about, Kyle, for this particular podcast is now we get to talk about races that matter. For the last 3 months, it feels like, even slightly going back to the playoffs, like a lot of these rounds, it's kind of gimmicky, kind of like, oh, what does all this really mean? Anaheim won. Nobody is hiding. Nobody is like, this is where everyone has to put up or shut up. Everybody's chips are on the table. I'm excited about it. We're not having half the field is doing World Supercross, and the other half of the series is over in Paris or something to that effect. This is what it's all about. It's Monster Energy Supercross, and it's kicking off in just a couple weeks' time.
Man, I'm excited. This is, we're inside of a month now. We got just a little over 3 weeks left before we finally get back to racing and get, like you said, all the heavy hitters back. Everybody's been either testing or racing in the case of World Supercross, and we can get into that a little bit later. But yeah, everybody's here, everybody's ready. Hopefully, knock on wood, we don't get the last
Oh, we
week and a
will.
half, 2 weeks where we lose a key player right before the season starts. But man, I'm excited, and with everything that's been going on the last few months, ever since SMX ended, with all the off-season races that have been going on, this is going to be, I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been a little bit more hype for the last, the last, couple of weeks at least going into A1. I mean, I know we're still a few weeks off, but I figured we'd have a little bit more excitement from around the industry. But this is going to be a good year, even with all things considered.
It certainly is. This off season has a little bit different tone to it because obviously you have a returning now three-time Supercross champion in Cooper Webb. He will be essentially the flagship rider over at Yamaha, as we're going to go through each manufacturer and how those rosters shake out. But obviously last year we had a number of athletes not able to compete in the entire series, so that kind of threw some results up in the air, as well as obviously some people feel like maybe the best rate the fastest racer didn't end up winning the championship, which is part of the argument on maybe all three of the championships that Cooper Webb has won. But you can't take anything away from that young man. He has been there when it counts, and he's been there when everybody else is faltering. And yeah, we're not going to get to Yamaha right off the hop because we got some breaking news, some breaking moves coming down the pipe here. 450 class. We're getting some Austin Forkner. Tell me about it.
Man, yeah, during the preseason media days that SMX had out in Anaheim, like Austin had hinted about that. Somebody had even asked him about that, so he kind of said, it had been in talks and everything. I didn't think it was actually going to happen, but yeah, like you said, breaking news today. Austin Faulkner finally going to race the 450. And I'm a little bit mixed on it just because if you look at the last 18 months of what he had to go through with his surgeries and everything, but also how 2025 looked for him, it wasn't the old Austin Faulkner. However, that's not a bad thing. He made it through the season. He still had a couple of crashes and stuff, but he didn't miss any races. He finished everything. And I'm interested to see with him being on a brand new bike, not only for him, but just in general, the new Triumph 450 that we've been waiting on for over a year now. It's finally coming into play. I'm interested to see how he adapts to it. He hasn't had a lot of time on it. He's got 3 more weeks, 4 more weeks to get comfortable on it and get a feel for how the 450 works on a supercross track. But maybe this is what he needs to kind of figure out a little bit more refined riding style and then take that into 250 East, because he's not going to run the full season, obviously, according to the statement, but he's going to run 450 West the first probably 4 or 5 rounds. I don't know if he's going to do all 6 before we get to Houston or Dallas, whatever the first East race is, but it's definitely shaking things up. But I think it's going to come with a lot of excitement that he's racing 450, plus the fact that, until he decided to do that, until that, arrangement was agreed upon between he and Jeremy Coker and everybody at Triumph, they weren't going to have a 450 guy at A1 with Jordan Smith still being out with injury.
Certainly. And I'm particularly excited about this because, yeah, we have waited a long time to see Austin Faulkner in Supercross on a 450. For me, I really hope that for the team as well as Austin, they sort of approach this with not a ton of expectation as far as results go. Go out there, get your feet wet, realize that these results, it's not the end of the world if it goes poorly, and if it happens to go awesome, that's just an absolute bonus. Having the bike and an athlete on it, Anaheim 1 is an absolute compulsory thing. Obviously, with the injury to Jordan Smith, that wasn't in the cards. And hats off to a guy like Austin Faulkner for jumping on this opportunity and treating it as exactly that, by just like going out there. And I think that he's going to be frisky. I think it sort of has shades of back in the day when we used to see like a pro circuit athlete like Mike Brown ride a 252 stroke randomly or Nathan Ramsey for a few rounds, or even back in, I believe it was 2002, if I'm not mistaken, when Chad Reed was able to jump on the 252 stroke and make some noise in the 250 class before going and racing on the East. As well as, I honestly think that it helps his racecraft when things go over to the East Coast, because he's already going to have those gate drops. All of the jitters are out as a brand new season. It's going to feel like just another weekend at the races for Austin Faulkner when things get going on the East.
Absolutely. And the guys that he has behind him at that Triumph team are definitely going to, they've got, like I said, they've got 3-4 weeks left to really get that bike dialed down with Jeremy Coker and Styles Robertson as a test rider. And just, Styles is very knowledgeable. Obviously, he's retired. He announced that during the summer. He didn't have the career that everyone, thought he would with the amateur career that he had, but Styles is very knowledgeable. He's a very intelligent rider, and he's going to be able to pick apart what Austin looks like on the motorcycle at the Triumph Test Track in Georgia. And between all those guys and everybody, with the motor package that they have for that Triumph, they're going to definitely, I don't know what kind of results. I wouldn't be surprised if he puts a top 10 in at Anaheim 1. He's still a light guy. He's going to get starts. He's always been such a great starter. So if he can keep his head clear and just stay focused and not do anything erratic, I'd say a top 10 at A1 is very in the cards, and maybe even like a 6-7 finish, depending on how things stack up.
Yeah, I
Can't
totally
believe
agree.
I actually just said that too.
Every time you do, I'm not gonna let the one slide by. Every once in a while, like he might get 6th, he might get 7th. Who knows? It's all just up in the air. But the kids are gonna like that. I might clip that. But no, I totally agree with you. This is going to be a really exciting season, and I think with some of these younger athletes jumping into the 450 class, which we're going to see more of in the coming years, with a lot of that sort of the late 2010 or late aughts, early 2010s athletes starting to go off into the sunset. we're going to get more resurgence or like an injection of this young talent into the 450 class. I couldn't be more excited for it. Is it about time to talk about the defending champ?
Yeah, let's talk about old three time.
Let's talk about old three-time uh, Cooper Webb. He will always be the most disrespected and underrated champion rolling into the season after he wins a championship, no matter what. There's a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, would consider him to not even be in the top three for favorites for this championship. And like, I'm sure he's going to go prove a lot of those people wrong throughout the year. But where do you see Cooper Webb slotting in the early rounds of Supercross this year? It's going to be like with everybody healthy, knock on wood. It's not going to be easy to be on the podium, whether you're a returning champion or someone who's trying to get their first one.
Nah, and it's definitely going to be difficult to be consistently on the podium. But I mean, if there's anything that we've seen out of Cooper Webb his entire career, he's a gamer. It doesn't matter what the conditions are. Doesn't matter
Amen.
what his personal setbacks are. With any kind of injuries or nagging, just soreness or anything like that. When it comes time to race, Cooper Webb's a gamer, and no matter how bad the track is, when it as far as just on its face, he figures out a way. And as far as his riding style goes, bringing that aspect into it, especially if the corners get rutted, he's the first guy and one of the only guys that, adapts to just going as low as you possibly need to in the berm, in the rut and squirting out of it, still getting the rhythm that he needs to, out of the, a 3-4 or, a 3-5, anything like that. And he just figures out a way. He's one of the most adaptable riders that we have ever seen in this sport. And he's got the grit and, I don't know if arrogance is the right word, but he's so stubborn. He's like, I'm either going to figure this out and win this race, or I'm going to die trying. But
Yep.
Cooper Webb never shorts you on effort. That we never know what we're going to get with him, because every off season when he does, Paris, or in this case, he showed up at Sydney for the World Supercross, we didn't see the best Cooper Webb. He got smoked, for lack of a better word, in Paris by Jett, by Hunter, and by especially Malcolm. And then World Supercross at Sydney, he has a poor result in race one. He has a poor result in race two, and then he goes out and wins race three. I might have that mixed up a little bit, but
No, I think that's right.
how are you supposed to determine anything from four races, or 6-7 races? Son of a gun, I did it again. But between Bercy and Sydney, how are you supposed to take anything out of that, and say with confidence how Cooper's going to do this season? He just, no matter what, even if it doesn't start well, he keeps building throughout the year. And by the time we get to round 12, 13, 14, he's right in the mix.
Right. And when it comes to a battle of attrition, aside from a couple of seasons, uh, Cooper Webb has been durable, and availability is the greatest ability when it comes to professional athletes. He's certainly been exactly that. So I think I would like to think this is a dumb question, but you are considering Cooper Webb as a title threat and a contender in order to defend his title this year, correct?
I don't understand how anybody can actually count him out. Like, I get why going into the opening few rounds, based on the offseason, people can make the argument. But over the course of the 17 rounds, for anybody to seriously think that he's not going to be in the mix at the end of the year, I think is foolish. So yeah, I'm going to say Cooper Webb is absolutely a contender to defend that title and go for number 4. There's only a couple other guys that have ever won 4 titles.
All right, so we got one Supercross winner already that we've talked about here on the podcast, this being the 2026 Supercross preview show in the 450 class. You're going to come on and talk 250 West with me once we figure out who the hell is racing this year?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we got a few guys established on as far as the teams. I think Club and I think Pro Circuit have announce their guys, and I
Pretty
know
much, yeah.
we know at least one guy for sure on Star, and then of course the satellite teams like the Bar X's
Hmm.
and all that. But yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we'll jump on and do that. How about his teammate? We go from one Cooper to another Cooper. Justin Cooper. Uh, he has shown flashes of brilliance. I think if he can figure out the whoops, especially early in the season, he's going to be a threat. The qualifying is always there. Justin Cooper this year, I guess is this his third year in 250 or 450 Supercross or second year?
Second full season. He only
Second
did the
full
he only did the
season.
half year in 24, I
Right.
think is what it was. But no, this is where Jake
This is a
Hoop
big
needs
year
to,
for him.
yeah, he needs to step up this year and really needs to break out. And he had a couple podiums in 2025. Yeah, his biggest Achilles heel is the whoops. And if he could figure that out, he'd be the ultimate rider. The fact that he is lackluster in the whoops, but he can make up time in every other aspect of the track is impressive. And it's not even noticeable that he's doing it, which is the
Right.
crazy thing. Like you look at a guy like Jett or Eli or Chase, it's visibly obvious where they're making up time on the track, even outside of the whoop section. Coop, he's just steady Eddie. He's
Mhm.
smooth. He doesn't really make the big mistakes ever, but he's so efficient that it's just he pieces everything together, and just those little tenth here, 2/10 there make up the difference for losing the half a second here or there in the whoop section.
Absolutely. And honestly, if he ever figures out the whoops to the same proficiency as those around him, he's going to be a really big problem, especially if he can get his starts. Starts and whoops are going to be the tail of the tape for Justin Cooper in 2026. You heard it here first.
Yeah, absolutely. And the off-season races that he did, which mainly were just the two or three World Supercrosses he did, Argentina, he did Vancouver. I can't remember if he did Gold Coast or not, but with the exception of maybe one race out of the six that he did, if he only did six, or if he did nine, regardless, I think it was one, maybe two of those finals that he did not get at least a top three start. And
Yeah.
his starts are on. Yeah, the key players weren't there. Jett, Hunter, they weren't there, but that doesn't matter. Jay Coop has shown time and time again throughout his 250 career, and then the first year and a half that he's done the 450s in Supercross, he is there. Even if it's not there, he doesn't go for it, but he figures out a way to at least keep himself in the conversation for a top five consistently.
Couldn't agree more. As far as I know, for 2026, Star Racing Yamaha is still using recluse clutches. That's what they used in 2025. That's what they also used in 2024. And that was a bit of a linchpin as to how effective they were on the starts. I know on the stock motorcycle, no, like there's very few things that are similar on a Star Racing Yamaha 450 that you would find on your showroom floor. But I know they've gone with a Nissan clutch for the stock bike. Like I could be wrong, but if they stick with the Recluse, the Apex clutch that they were using for last year, I think the starts should still be there. Yes, no?
I would say that the stars should be there if they're on that recluse clutch. I don't know what's going on with the Nissan. I heard a little bit about just the engagement of it is kind of off. Maybe
What,
not off, but it's it's
just
a different
wishy-washy?
characteristic. Yeah, it's a different characteristic compared to the recluse. Um, One thing that's been a talking point in the last couple of weeks, the 2026 frame, particularly like the rear end of the bike with the subframe, has been kind of
Yes.
issue as far as just where the plastic is sticking out, and that's caused issues. So a lot of
Yeah, like
guys,
actually just like hanging their boots up and stuff.
yeah, they're hanging their boots up, and then just the characteristic, as far as the weight transfer on the suspension has been a talking point. So a lot of guys have been switching back. I've heard to the 2025, not even just the subframe, but the entire 2025 frame as a whole. Um, and that's not even just Star Yamaha. I've heard the same thing about some of the club guys. Privateers have been doing that ran the 2025 Yamaha and they're running the 2026. So I'm interested to see if Yamaha is going to make any adjustments to that after the fact, specifically for the race teams. But yeah, just yeah, and we it's not like that's a huge deal. We've seen that a million times with guys running old frames, even dating all the way back to the two-stroke days with
Yeah.
MC.
Hmm.
You know, guys did it with Suzuki's 10 years ago. Alessi was a big proponent of that when
Yeah, he
Genova
ran a
started the
2013 for
MCRT.
like 8 years.
Right, exactly. So that's not the biggest deal in the world, but yeah, as far as back to the original talking point, the Recluse versus the Nissan clutches, if they stick to that Recluse, I don't think anything internally within the clutch hub changed, but the Nissan components themselves are what the difference is. But yeah, and Jake Hoop's light. He ought to
Yes.
be getting top three starts along with Faulkner, like we were talking about before.
Totally agree. And yeah, for those who are looking for a Recluse Clutch, Race Winning Brands is the company that you're looking for. That wraps up the 450 class for the Yamaha contingent. We'll talk a little bit about their flagship rider, maybe the straw that stirs the drink over at Star Racing Yamaha when we talk 250s. I don't think we're going to see Haiden Deegan on a 450 in Supercross at all, do you?
Uh, it's not looking like that. I heard it from a couple of reliable sources that it's at least a few weeks ago. There was talk of he's confirmed to run 250 West, but there was talk of him possibly doing a few 450 races on the East Coast once the East Coast series started. Not doing all
Like
of
a
them, but just
Daytona?
I think Daytona would be the perfect place for him to actually come out on a 450 if he
Why not?
doesn't do it at Houston, Dallas, whatever the first East race is. I can never remember what the
I
schedule
think
is
it's
showing, but
Houston. Yeah.
yeah. But even if he doesn't do Houston, come out of Daytona. We've seen Jeremy Martin do that. We've seen RJ Hampshire do that with tremendous success. Heat race wins and podiums for both of those guys. Or at least J Mart. RJ wasn't far off of a podium when he did it a couple of years ago on a 450. And Deegan, we saw how well he rode in Argentina. We saw how well he rode in Gold Coast. I don't think he's ready to do a full 450 season. I think that's a smart move by him, Brian, Bobby, everybody over at Yamaha, Rich, everybody. Because and you see everybody else, on the message boards and everything saying, "Oh, he's ready," whatever. Well, everyone thought Ricky Carmichael was ready in 1999, and that didn't go well at all.
Nope.
And
And
so,
he was not.
no, and I mean, it took him his third season before he won a true Supercross. Yeah, his second season he won Daytona, but that was the only race Ricky won that year. But it took him his third season before he actually won a true Supercross inside of a stadium. So I think it's the right move that he's going to run 250s one more year. But I would like to see him pop out at Daytona or like a softer track, like an Indianapolis, or maybe a good little mix like a Birmingham or something like that, just to give himself a little bit of a feel for that class for 20 minutes.
Yeah, why not? There's with a pressure-free environment to do exactly that, I think would be like it's it's free experience, you know what I mean? I think there's so much to be learned by doing exactly that, so I would personally love to see it. Like I would also maybe suggest that Star Racing fit his 450 for a set of rear view mirrors because that kid looks back more than Mike Alessi ever did, who kind of, I think Mike used to give himself whiplash worrying about what's going on behind him. Hayden seems to have inherited that moniker as somebody who likes to check the rearview mirror a lot more than a lot of other racers do. I honestly, personally, I've never seen somebody more concerned with what's going on behind them than Hayden Deegan.
Well, and it was really just that one race in Argentina that he did that, which was just weird because I mean, he's gone his whole career really without doing that. I mean, he'll do the occasional look back, I mean, really okay, if we're gonna go on most recent, he did it at Charlotte and then again in Argentina, but throughout his whole career, ever since he turned pro, he was never that guy to look behind him. Maybe once just to check where somebody was, but not because he was worried about where anybody was directly behind him, whether they were going to tee him up or whatever. So I think that was really out of character. But after he did that one race and then ultimately crashed, he rectified the situation in the final moto that night. So I think, but I think
Race
that gave
forward.
him a lot of, yeah, I think that gave him a lot of insight as to what is going to happen. But I mean, he's going to have more guys once he finally makes that jump. But since he's going to run the outdoors full time next year on the 450, he's going to come into 2027 with a lot more mental clarity on what needs to happen in that class.
Right. And honestly, I think that guys turning pro at the outdoors and racing the basically the back half of the season and maybe also racing SMX finals or the playoffs or whatever you want to call it is a better idea than just throwing yourself right into 250 Supercross. No different than uh Chase Sexton has done it now. We've seen it with Jett Lawrence as well. It seems to work out when these guys take some time to spend a summer on a 450, really get acclimated to the bike, maybe put a ton of bricks in your ass by putting on some extra muscle to throw the bike around, and then race 450 Supercross the following year. I think that's the better way to do it.
Absolutely. And just, I mean, nobody is born and grows up and the first thing they ever touch is a supercross track. So they're comfortable on motocross. It's more free riding on the motorcycle. The bike gets a little bit more loose. It dances around a lot more than in supercross. So you get that feeling of, all right, here's what the bike's going to do if the rear end kicks out, the front end kicks out. Here's what the weight's going to feel like, and so forth. So you can kind of refine that and refine the technique once you start riding supercross in the off season.
Totally agree. All right, so yeah, we've got Yamahas in the rearview mirror, and we haven't talked about Eli Tomac because that guy changed colors yet again. It's crazy to think that at one point Eli spent the majority of the beginning of his career on a Geico Honda. That feels like forever ago now. Same thing with his time over at Kawasaki. It's in the rearview mirror as well as us talking about Yamahas on this podcast. He now finds himself with a cable clutch on a KTM. I have my own thoughts, but how do you think this is going to go?
I'm with everything that's been going on that we've already heard lately. Just, I mean, ever since he got on that bike, plus what happened last year, and some of the stuff. Well, a lot of the stuff was on a certain Spanish rider that you know we that's with a different team and a different color, but
Yeah.
we'll get into that. But no, just with everything that we've already heard since Eli's been on the bike, plus everything that we heard during the middle part of 2025 with the other guys that were on that orange bike, as far as the rear shock goes, I'm not worried about Eli. I'm worried about the KTM in general. Just what is going on? Why can't anybody keep a rear shock holding up for 20 minutes? I don't understand what the problem is. If it's a manufacturing thing, if it's a inner design flaw with certain components within the reservoir, I don't understand what's going on and why it hasn't been fixed. But that's my concern. I'm not worried about Eli. He showed in Vancouver that bike is perfectly capable. He is perfectly capable on that motorcycle when it stays together. As long as the rear shock holds up, and now that he's got a cable clutch, that'll hold up. I have more confidence in him on a cable clutch with that bike than I did with the hydraulic clutch. So I think all that, if everything can hold together, I'm not worried about it, but we got to fix that rear shock problem first.
Absolutely. I think if the bike is an issue, we see him fighting it all year long, and I really question how patient is Eli going to be with KTM in putting a consistently good performing motorcycle under him every single weekend. Because I think I could see a lot of frustration building up if he feels like the bike is holding him back in any way, shape, or form. That being said, if and KTM has had a history like a long time ago of having some issues, but they've also rectified that by having many seasons of very, very consistently well-performing motorcycles. If they're able to attain that, and I know they're capable of it, if they're able to do it, Eli Tomac is a threat to win every single weekend. and that's the way it's going to be until he hangs up the boots for real.
I agree. Yeah, and I mean the combination of he and the personnel over at KTM, you're not going to get cheated on effort from Eli. You're not going to
Nope.
get cheated on effort from Ian Harrison, Roger, all
Anybody
the
over
guys
there.
that are all the guys that are part of that program over there. Jay Dungy, he's wrenching for Eli now. You're
Yeah.
not going to
I like that
get
combo too. I really like Jade
that's
working
a
with
deadly
Eli.
combo. That's a Skip Norfolk, Jeremy McGrath type of combo, a J Bone and Jeff Emick type of combo. Like that's if the bike can hold together, those two are going to be a deadly combination at the races this year. Uh, yeah, I honestly didn't expect him to adapt as fast as he has on that bike. Not because he's not capable, but it's just so different. Like you
Yeah.
said, he's been on three different manufacturers before. I mean, it's been 10 years. We're coming up on 10 years since he first debuted on a Kawasaki. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy that it's been that long ago. And the new KTM compared to anything else. I mean, and he came off a Yamaha. You can't get any more different in two motorcycles than a KTM and a Yamaha. Like there's no farther discrepancy between any motorcycles than those two. But he adapted to it way faster than I thought was possible. Just given those facts, just aluminum to steel frame. Yeah, they put the cable clutch on it, but just it's such different characteristics between those two
It's
motorcycles.
a smaller motorcycle. It's a shorter motorcycle. There's a
Different
lot
power
of
curve.
everything. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a big jump, and so far, it seems that he's been able to take it in stride and be able to be pretty potent on it. So I guess there's still a lot of question marks when it comes to Eli as far as how good he's going to be every single weekend. But all things equal, and if he has the bike he needs to do exactly that, like I said, he's a threat every single weekend. Um, Hey, and I might catch some flack about this, but I don't think you can say the same about one of his teammates here. And I'm not going straight for the Spaniard. There's times, there's weekends where when you watch Aaron Plessinger ride, you're like, dude, that guy's flowing, that guy's hitting his marks. He looks like he's having fun riding his motorcycle. And there are some weekends, Kyle, when it does not look that way. He looks like he's fighting his motorcycle. He does not look like he's having fun out there. And the cowboy seems to have like he forgot his spurs at home or something to that effect. I don't know the reference, but either way, like there's some really hot and cold weekends. A little bit of a consistency issue for Aaron Plessinger. See if he can iron that out for 2026.
Yeah, I think the biggest question mark for Aaron coming into next year is just, his health. Obviously, he pulled out of the last few outdoors, didn't run SMX. Um, he said he at least came out on his social media and said, "Hey, this isn't what the problem was." He never really said what the problem exactly was, but he was getting a lot of flack from people on social media saying he's got this, he's got this. He's like, "No, I don't have this," and a lot of it was, the chronic fatigue, the Epstein Barr, all that stuff. He did say a little bit, it started as an infection, and he just kept going with it. He didn't, let it, run its course. That's my only concern with him. He's good on the bike. He's adaptable on the bike. He's the most well-rounded rider on that gate. Coming from the off-road background. I mean, I watched him when he was 7 years old on a 50. I watched him all through the woods before he finally made the full-time move to motocross. And he's very adaptable. I think after spending how many years now? I think this was the sixth year in the 450 class. He's finally got enough, experience under his belt through his sickness, his injuries, winning races, throwing races away, unfortunately. I think coming into this year, as long as he's healthy, he's finally got that mental clarity to him to be like, all right, I've learned what to do. I've learned what not to do. Let's make sure no matter what, we put every piece of the puzzle together every single night. If all I can muster is a fifth, then that's what it's going to be. But I'm not going to go throwing away races. I'm not going to crash out. I mean, his 2025, the first 3-4 rounds of 2025 were just dismal for him.
Right.
I don't know if you could have had a worse start to the year. But then once we got to the end of the Supercross season, his riding and his results, I think the last 8 rounds, ever since Daytona, ever since he got that podium at Daytona, throughout the rest of the year, I think he was fourth in points from
Yeah.
that moment on. Like he was just on fire. He was happy, which is hard to ever find that guy not happy. I mean, I've known him since he was knee high to a duck, and I've never hardly ever seen that kid not happy. But just if he can bring that fun to it like he always has, but then just keep his head in check out during the 20-minute plus 2 lap main events or 1 lap main events, I think he's going to be fine this year as long as outside forces don't ruin it for him. I think he's going to be fine. I think if he's coming in with confidence that, hey, my health is fine, then I think he's going to be more surprising than what people give him credit for.
So last year he ends up sixth in points. What's better for Aaron Plessinger is that he finds himself 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7 throughout the entire year, and it just rides consistently. And ends up somewhere around, like obviously maybe has like some breakout rides. Grabs himself a podium, or is it better that he has those like sort of those peaks, knowing that the valleys might also be just as spectacular?
I think if the peaks can be consistent, and when I say consistent, I mean a third of the year being on the podium, but the valleys at worst are a fifth or a sixth. I think that's a good season for him. But keep himself in the conversation all year and just show me the fight. Even if it's an eighth on an off night, show me the fight. If that means that if it's an eighth because it's a bad start or an early crash, show me the fight and show me that, like, hey, yeah, I had this issue, but here's how my riding was. Let the lap time show that he was riding better than what the result is.
Right, it sounds crazy, but in 2025, Aaron Plessinger's first performance inside the top five was Daytona, which was a third. And then after that, he started rattling them off. He was almost never outside the top five. But prior to that, he went 9, 22, 22, 9, 8, 9, 7.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
That
can't
can't
have
happen again.
no, and for somebody that's on a factory KTM, I mean, I don't know if any factory rider in the last 5, 6 years that had a more just egregious start to their season than what he had. Like it
You're a
was,
popular guy.
yeah. But yeah, but Daytona, and if there's anybody that's going to break out of nowhere and win the Daytona Supercross with how rough that track gets, it's Aaron. And
Very well could be Aaron.
I mean, him pulling that podium this year wasn't a one-off thing. He has been on the podium on a Yamaha at Daytona before. He was running in podium position a few years before that on a Yamaha before he went over the bars and ended his season.
And he
Daytona
even
is
got a win last year at Foxborough, even though it was a hellacious mutter.
right.
He is a race winner last year in this
Yeah,
class.
exactly. So I think you put all that together. I think, like I said before, if he keeps his head in check, he's going to be, you know, better as long as, like I said, as long as no outside forces derail any kind of momentum that he has built up right now. I think he's going to be in a lot better position, especially to start the year than what he did in 2025.
Totally agree. Now, before we move over to the white KTMs from the orange KTMs, we have one last rider in the 450 roster to talk about, and that's Jorge Prado. The Spaniard had about as bad of a 2025 as you could possibly have. I guess it's still a couple of weeks left to go, so things can still kind of go sideways for him, but knock on wood, they won't. The Kawasaki experiment with Jorge Prado couldn't have gone any worse than it did, from both the behavior and race results standpoint. Um, and I would like to hope that 1 year is a blip on his like, I guess, like the story that is Jorge Prado's career. But that is completely up to Jorge. I've seen a lot of speed from him in the past, mostly obviously outdoors. He's like extremely skilled on a motorcycle, but it's the character issues that I'm seeing that I'm not liking. It's the not taking ownership for the situation you're in, or not taking ownership for the results that you're getting on weekends. You can't tell me that who was it? Mitchell Harrison on a Kawasaki passing him at more than in a couple of outdoor nationals is acceptable in any way, shape, or form. He's now back on the Austrian manufacturer where he should be happy. But let's get serious. Like, he's going to struggle in Supercross. He's not going to be a top five guy on a regular basis. Not with this class the way it is right now. I'm not waiting with bated breath when it comes to Jorge Prado. He's got to show me. I don't see him inside the top five unless there's some bad mistakes from riders or some injuries. It's going to be a long winter for him, and I hope he stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean, to hit up on the most recent point you brought up, I mean, I could see him being a top five in a really nasty mutter or
Sure.
like a Daytona. That would be it, just because of how those types of conditions are. But when you look at him, the last let's see here, 15, 16 months for him have gone absolutely horrendous. I mean, I go back to when you and I were at Matterley Basin in 2024 Motocross Nations. He wasn't even close.
No.
He wasn't even in the discussion in any of his motos, the qualifying race on Saturday, and it just carried from even before then on into January of this year. And then we lose him before we even leave January in 2025 for Supercross. And it obviously, it's not even that it went stagnant. It got to the crest and then just immediately fell off a cliff. And yeah, like you said, just his lack of accountability for his part of it, I think is weird. I'm not going to not put it all on him. I'm also not going to crap all over Kawasaki, but we've heard over the years that, it's not the best environment over there just for certain reasons. We've seen guys that have left Kawasaki, whether they've been on good terms, bad terms, ugly, however have you.
Sure.
I mean, they're on their
Kawasaki's not perfect, but come on.
Yeah, that was but I don't know if it was just the language barrier part of it, but Jorge's English isn't god awful. It's not like he doesn't know English, and it's not like the guys at Kawasaki don't know enough of Spanish to not be able to communicate a little bit to get him into a better spot than what he ended up with last year. But yeah, I mean, can you think of a more polarizing rider that wasn't just a complete asshole in the history of the sport?
Honestly, the only person that I can sort of liken it to would be a Christophe Purcell, who
he wasn't even that bad.
He wasn't even that bad. He never had.
He was difficult, but he wasn't that bad.
Yeah, or if you want to talk about another Frenchman in a Mikel Pichon, but both those guys at least produced at some level in Supercross. Like, we haven't seen anything from Jorge that shows us that he has a mastery of this sport indoors. And outdoors is where everyone thought they was going to kick some ass and take some names, and he just never showed it in 450 outdoors last year whatsoever. The fact that actually went worse than the fact that outdoors actually went worse than Supercross. Right. So that is a major red flag. So just put me in the camp of I need to see it. The jury is out on Jorge Prado until he shows me and everybody else that that he's got some juice. I don't expect much from him unless, like you said, has a hellacious mutter. Even in that fact, the fact that he just doesn't seem to be showing that the grit and toughness needed to perform over here in America. That's a big that's a serious thing to sort of question a man's toughness. And I hope that doesn't hurt his feelings, but if it does, then that's the whole reason why I'm saying it, bro. It's a very concerning thing, and I think that he definitely needs to right the ship. And that way, tell you about another guy on a Austrian manufacturer that you never have to question his toughness. That's RJ Hampshire. He's making his full season debut as a 450 superstar, coming off of a championship in 2025. He'll be teammates with Malcolm Stewart. Maybe two of the most like underrated and flying under the radar athletes in this class, both on this under the same truck. They're both a lot of fun to watch. What can you tell me about the guys on the white KTMs?
Man, that's got to be one of the just if it's two riders versus two riders versus two riders as far as just personality goes, that's got to be one of the more fun teams around the pits. I mean, obviously we know how Malcolm is, just he's like Aaron, just big smile on his face all the time. RJ, yeah, he's a little more reserved, a little more quiet, but he's just one of the nice guys in the sport, and he's just a good dude to be
Absolutely.
around. I like what I'm seeing out of Malcolm. Obviously, we don't have anything sample wise other than outdoors for RJ. But I think RJ can be in that 7-8 range consistently.
Didn't
And
RJ ride a few supercrosses, not
he
last
did
year, but the year prior? Or
he did
four,
one. He did Daytona.
one.
All he did was Daytona. He won the heat race, and I think he got like
He did
fourth or
good.
fifth in the main.
He did
Yeah.
good.
And like he won that heat race convincingly. Like it's not like he, had to hold off and block everybody to win that heat race. I mean, he got the whole shot and just handled it. But like there's not enough on RJ with a 450 on Supercross that I've seen
Mm.
yet. But I think just if he keeps himself in check, obviously he didn't really make the big mistake in outdoors like he was known for his whole 250 career. So I think with that, and he's got that, despite him being one of the shorter guys, he's got that technique that he's able to adapt if it's not going right, through a rhythm section. He figures out a way to just kind of muscle his way through it. And he's in great shape. He always has been. He's really strong on the motorcycle. I don't know if I put him in the consistent top 5 range, but I think he can get in the top 5 with a good start on any given weekend.
I think his
But I
qualifying
think
is going to be good. I think
I'd
a
say
lot
I'd
of
say he's a
really good
consistent
weekends.
I'd say he's a
Yeah,
consistent top 4, top 5 in qualifying on that 450.
that's what I'm thinking. Is I think that there may be a little bit of a wrinkle to his game. Is I think there's going to be a lot of good weekends on with RJ that are like the springboard of that is going to be a second, third, maybe even a top qualifier. I think he can turn that into some really good results. Maybe some of the ruddier tracks over on the East Coast, maybe like the right wrist might not agree with that as well. But the hard pack stuff I think is really going to be somewhere he shines, especially on the West Coast. Although like the tracks don't seem to be nearly as hard and baked in as they have in previous years. You and I think of like when we think of West Coast Supercross, we think of like jump faces that are completely flat. It's just not that way anymore at all in terms of Supercross. But I think both these guys have an opportunity to make some noise at different times of the year. Yes, no?
Yeah, I agree. And like when I think of RJ's riding style, like I put him on a lot like how Villapoto used to be and how Ricky used to be. RJ's really good with steering with the rear end of the motorcycle. And I think that, especially like you said with the West Coast races, I think that's where he's really going to shine with that 450. And especially like you brought up with his right wrist issue, that's where, it's not going to get as rutted up on those West Coast tracks. Allows for him to have a little bit more room to bounce around and breathe and kind of work out his lines a little bit. So I think that's going to be one of his strong suit is just he's good at making kind of off brand lines, just unconventional lines. He's really good at making those work, and I think that's where he's going to surprise some people and just make some passes that you'd think and nobody's going to make a pass there, and yet he'll find a way to, at least if he doesn't complete the pass, he's going to at least draw even with some people, and if he can get to the inside of them at by the end of the next corner, he'll solidify the pass that way. But he's one of those more adaptable guys. So I think that's what I'm kind of expecting out of him in that regard. And then Malcolm, I think this is the year that he can finally step up. He won Tampa. That was awesome. I've never heard
Yes,
a crowd
sir.
like that. Like that was just unreal. I was glad I was
A crowd
there
has
for
never
that.
wanted to see someone win so badly. The
Absolutely
sport.
not. I mean that I assimilate that to Aaron the previous year when he finally won in San Francisco after throwing away Detroit the year before that. Like those are just two guys that people want to see do well. And it's awesome that way. And for Malcolm to get that win was just truly something special. But then he showed speed the entire year, even, aside from that one win. And then Paris this year, he was on a different level. I've never seen him ride like that and just look so comfortable on a motorcycle.
Yeah, no, he looks special. And here's the thing: I think that these two guys on Husqvarna's, their strengths are going to be at different tracks. And let me just quickly contradict myself here. I think RJ Hampshire is possibly going to do get his best results later in the season, but I think he has the best opportunity to make some serious damage early because I think that those tracks over on the West Coast are a little bit going to be a little bit more his style, like you said, a little bit more freedom to maybe move the bike around that aren't going to punish him the same way some of the East Coast tracks are. But I think if he's smart about it and he sort of manages his expectations early as far as what he's able to come up with early in the season, that's what's going to allow him to gain the experience to have those better rides later in the year when we will have some injuries. Unfortunately, it always happens, as well as just him being a more adept to riding that 450. But for me, when it comes to Malcolm, I think if he's able to get out of California nice and healthy, he's always going to be fast in the whoops. He always is. But we get into those Tampas and St. Louis and Indy. I could totally see Malcolm Stewart rattling off some podiums there, even with the stacked class that we have not yet even talked about, a Supercross champion in Chase Sexton, or a former race winner in Barsha Ferrandis, Jason Anderson. We're getting long on this thing here. We haven't even talked about those guys. I think RJ Hampshire and Malcolm Stewart can run with them on any weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are guys that maybe it doesn't happen every single round, but I'd say half of the races this year they're going to be in that top 5 conversation, both of them. It wouldn't put it past me to have 2 Huskies on a podium at one race.
Totally. So, and then this is how we get every single year that I've done this. We always have top 10, top 5 guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're in that realm that we used to be back in the 80s and 90s when so many guys, you'd have so many winners and so many guys on the podium mixing it in the year that, even the guy that won the championship could end up with a 12th one night for whatever reason. We're in that realm where we could end up with guys that are championship contenders that don't even crack the top 5, and not because of crashes, but just because
just sheer talent on the line.
It just didn't happen that night. Yeah.
Yeah, no, far gone are the days where you could say, all right, Carmichael's down by 18. He needs 3 points a race. If he wins the next 6 races, that's 3 points a race. Whoever's in second will probably more than likely get second. That's 18 points. 6 weeks from now, there'll be a tie for points. And that's by and large, that would almost be how things would shake out. Whereas we don't have that anymore. And to which I ask you, is it time to talk about the ditch pickles?
Yeah, let's go with the ditch pickles.
Let's go straight into the Kawasaki's. Garrett Marchbanks is an absolute man child. I think he's gonna the 450 boost. We heard it talked about in the soundtrack to I believe that's Motocross, or is it MX vs ATV Unleashed. Now he's finally gonna feel it. 450 class all season long. Monster Energy Kawasaki with the FXR gear pretty much head to toe. I'm excited to see it. Garrett Marchbanks will be there, as well as the number 4 is back on a Kawasaki in the 450 class for the first time since 2001. Color me excited.
Man, that's the fact that Kawasaki is, just completely it's a completely different team than what it was just a year ago.
Yes, sir.
Is something that we haven't seen in a while, especially with Kawasaki. And it's rare that we've seen it with any team.
Yeah.
But from one year to the next. As far as Garrett goes, I'm excited to see this. The only question I have for him is just if he can start. Even when he was on that Club MX 450, the starts, they were better. They still weren't great. The Cowie has not really been known for getting off the start, whether that is the motorcycle or whether that's just who they've had on it.
It's the slowest 450,
Jason Anderson. Just if they can figure out a motor package, which they need to for a guy like Chase, then that'll change the entire landscape of the conversation. But going back to Garrett, I think it's just a shame given his situation. And like you said, man child. I mean, he's been 6'2" or 6'3", however tall he is, since he was 15 years old. I
Yeah.
mean, I got pictures of him at Loretta's from God only knows when, 2017 probably, in the B class, and he was huge then.
Oh
Like
yeah,
you
no,
just
Garrett Marchbanks was racing out in Utah on a 250F like at the age of 13. Like still probably racing a super mini at Loretta's, but competing for the 250B class in at like Mesquite or any of those races out there in Utah. It's been a
right. It's just
while.
like right. It's just, he had the injuries at the start of his 250 career. He gets one 250 Supercross win at Daytona right before the world shuts down. And then everything goes to hell for him
That
with
was
the
five
agent
years
that he
ago.
right, the
That was
agent that he
almost
had
6 years
that screwed
ago.
him. Yeah, exactly. 5.5 years ago now since he won his lone 250 Supercross. And then from there for a couple years, his career just hit a mountain of garbage, not for any real doing on his own, but just the people that he had around him, and it just put him in a really bad spot. But thanks to Brandon Haas and those guys at club, they were able to help resurrect his career. He got that second shot with Mitch, which if you get dumped by Mitch, there isn't a whole lot of times you're getting another shot.
Yeah, the only
He
couple of
got
guys have
that
gotten that second shot.
right.
Amazing that Justin Hill's one of those people, but
You can probably count on one hand how many guys have had two shots with Mitch in 30 years, 35 years of Mitch running a
yeah.
program. You can probably count on one hand how many guys have ever had a second shot.
Hmm.
And then it's parlayed into this. Yes, Cowie was without a second rider because they thought it was going to be Jorge, but this created the ultimate opportunity for Garrett to be on a bike that fits him, that he doesn't have to ride the absolute crap out of to keep up with everybody. And if they can figure out a motor package that suits him, that can get him off the line, that's not going to, essentially he ride the bike instead of the bike riding him, he can put it in for top fives. And, so many people look at the qualifying, the qualifying, the qualifying. He's never been a great qualifier. So what? Neither was Chad Reed.
Yeah,
Garrett's
no,
one of
and,
those
and
guys
Chad,
that
yeah,
Garrett's one of those
and
guys that shows up
yeah.
when it matters.
Absolutely, he does. I guess this is a simple question when it comes to that spot on Kawasaki. By the end of the year, who ends up higher in championship points, both for SMX and Supercross? Garrett Marchbanks or Jorge Prado?
I'm gonna go Garrett.
100%. I think it's going to be Marchbanks, and I think he's going to have some really really on weekends. I think there's going to be some weekends where you don't even see the guy. But as a rookie season in the 450 class, I'd expect no less. I think he's a great rider for Kawasaki. He's been with the brand for a long period of time, all the way back on mini bikes. It's a great homecoming and a great opportunity for him to be able to fly the FXR flag under a tent like that, which has always been a sort of like a bridge too far for a brand like FXR for a really long time. Now they get that rider in the mix with all the other 450 guys. He's going to be in opening ceremonies and all that fun stuff. I think I expect some good things from Garrett throughout the year. And then he's also got that other running mate that happens to be head to toe in Alpine Star gear, Chase Sexton on Kawasaki's. I don't think we've ever seen that. Um, First of all, he looks good on the Cowie. We didn't see much aside from him going out to Hawaii and some other clips here and there. I think he's keeping a little bit of a low profile, figuring out the bike. But I'm excited. This is going to be. I think this is going to be a great season for Chase Sexton. I'm not calling championship, but Chase Sexton's going to be a threat to win races every single weekend that he's healthy enough to line up.
Absolutely. And honestly, like I'm shocked that we've seen as much as we have in the preseason of him on that motorcycle. Like because he's always been so quiet on his social media and everything. But
Right,
the fact that we've seen multiple clips from the training, the
bangers.
riding facilities out of Corona, the place that he just built, the track that he just had built down in Florida, like the fact that we've been able to see all that has been really surprising leading into
He's
a
peacocking.
season.
He's
Yeah,
peacocking.
but yeah, to your point, he looks good on that bike. I don't know if it's been a while since I've seen a Kawasaki look that planted.
Hmm.
It's looking so good. And if he can keep that up and if everybody within that team with the suspension package and the chassis, modifications that they had to make. And if they can get the engine right with that thing, I mean, I know I'm sounding like a broken record because that's obvious, but just he's that thing on his face right now, just from what we've seen, it looks so good. Like, how can you bet against that motorcycle? I mean, it's been since the Eli days, the early Eli days, once he finally got over the injury, that we've seen a Kawasaki look that good where it's just effortless.
Yeah, no, I think that the team will be rejuvenated with a bunch of vigor, knowing that they're working with somebody that believes in them. I think he's where he wants to be, and he wants to make it work. And like you said, if the bike's looking that great in December, imagine how well things can be rolling once we get out of January and into some ruts out on the East Coast. There is a serious potential for this to be a really, really lethal combination. I would love to see it. And yeah, I'll just say it right now. Chase Sexton, he's not my title favorite, but he's gonna have something to say about the championship. And I would be surprised to see him outside of title contention when we go to Salt Lake for the final round. He'll be right in the mix, if not leading the points when we get there.
I think Chase wants to prove a lot, not only to himself, but to a lot of the people that, have had a lot to say ever since the beginning of May this year,
Mhm.
where he and not to discredit anything on Cooper Webb, but I mean, there's so many moments that you can look back on 2025 where Chase gave away that championship, and he knows it. Like, it's not like I mean, he can say, yeah, well, this and that and whatever else, but ultimately he knows he gave away that championship on multiple occasions because it came down to the final round and a few points.
Right.
Like, that could have been so easily made up with just some smarter decisions. And I think he's coming in even more, like, he always comes in with a lot of intensity, a lot of hunger, a lot of drive. He's never one to just be, nonchalant, mellow about entering a season. I think this year he's more focused. I think he's gonna lay the wood down, honestly, more than what people are thinking, just based on his past. And I think, when we get to round 4 or 5, I think he's gonna be the first multi-time winner of the year, just based on how he looks, the mentality that I think he's gonna be entering the season with, to where it's gonna be like, oh crap, everyone else is gonna be thinking, where did I go wrong on thinking that he's, the 10% better than what I thought, and that makes a difference.
Certainly. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I would be encouraged to see it. Like, as fans, as media, we love to see a challenger to not only last year's champion in Cooper Webb, but obviously we haven't gotten to him yet. Is the big number 18 is looming in the distance as well. He's going to be fast. I think Chase Sexton has the ability and the bike underneath him to be a nuisance and a problem on a weekend in, weekend out. Would not be surprised to see him get a whole shot and walk away with a victory or two before we get to the end of January. Let's move on to one of maybe the best looking. They'll be best in show on many a weekend, but you'd be hard pressed to see either one of these guys consistently in the top five. And I don't mean to besmirch the good name of Justin Barcia or Dylan Ferrandis, but it's going to be tough sledding for the Italian manufacturer, Troy Lee Designs, Red Bull, Ducati. It's a brand new team. It's a brand new bike. They don't have parts, and it's two guys that are, for the most part, on the backside of their career. Dylan Ferrandis a couple of years younger than Justin Barcia. But what are your expectations from this team aside from looking good? Mine aren't that high. Am I wrong?
It's hard to say. Like, I wish we had more preseason just visuals on them riding the bike. Obviously, we're not going to. If anybody isn't already aware of this, we haven't seen anything out of Justin because he crashed on day one of riding that motorcycle and has been off the bike ever since. Dylan, we're not going to see anything out of him just because he's never one to really post anything. But he, I think the entire effort between Troy and everybody at Ducati everybody back at the factory in Italy. I think this is a well-rounded effort for a lot of testing on that motorcycle because you couldn't get two completely different guys for their riding styles to develop that motorcycle. Dylan is so good. He's such a technical rider. He's got such good technique, as far as putting the bike where it needs to be and how it responds in a rhythm section, whoop section, all that. And then it's just obviously durability testing with Bam Bam. Like, if anything's going to break, it's going to break on him. Not that he's really ever broken anything. He's never had a motor blow up. That's a testament to the technology of all the other bikes that he's ridden. But you get such polarizing riding styles between those two. I think that's going to be one of the better ways to develop that bike for the next 3 to 4 years. And, it may not happen this year. It probably won't happen this year. But by year 3, once they finally get some factory parts, and, it's probably going to be with different riders by that point, but they're going to have a really good base moving forward to be a threat to winning races for sure. But as far as results this year, 8 to 12 for both of those guys. I'm not putting a lot into it. Just if something changes, great. I'd love to be proven wrong on that. And it's not me being negative. It's just being realistic just because we don't have any data on that bike other than 2 outdoors and a Motocross of Nations.
And they had bike issues at almost every single round.
Correct.
So we wait with bated breath to see the Ducati team roll out. Like I said, they're gonna look sick. The gear,
look great.
The bike, everything is gonna look like if
you are. Troy always has those relationships with like Sony Entertainment and stuff. Right. So they're gonna partner with a movie that's coming out next year anyway, and have a completely just off the wall look for the gear, the bikes, everything. That's just gonna blow everybody out of the water, like you said.
Yeah, there's going to be one weekend where they just absolutely blow the roof off the doors as far as just like the bike looking good, team looking good. It's so funny that like Dylan Ferrandis will be part of that, which I've never thought of him as being like any type of style master on and off the bike. And then of course you just have that. Like it is very much 2000 when John Dowd was in No Fear, and you're like, okay, that doesn't make any fucking sense, but here we are.
No fear on a Kawasaki, no less.
Yes. No, you didn't see that a lot either. Back-to-back years there. John Dowd and then Larry Ward. Maybe 2 of the least stylish athletes in motocross history were teammates of one Ricky Carmichael for those particular seasons. Let's just move straight into, I think the Ducatis are going to look cool. That is about it. But let's go to the Twisted Tea presented by Progressive Insurance Suzuki team. This is the Pipes Motorsports Group, a team that has now won a number of World Supercross championships, and they finally have a 1-2 punch that could both be on the podium at any round. They're still gonna have Colt Nichols keeping the beat every single round. Like he seems to find himself into a lot of LCQs every once in a while, is Colt Nichols, but still has the skills to pay the bills when it comes to the racing goes. But Jason Anderson is the World Supercross champion for 2025. He'll be pitted in, I believe, the same truck as Ken Roczen. Like I said, good 1-2 punch for Suzuki. The bikes are going to look good. They'll be on the progressive bikes, where I think Colt and I assume maybe Kyle Chisholm for a random round here and there, perhaps near Florida, will be on the Twisted Tea bikes. What are your thoughts on the yellow machines? They're still kickstarting it. They're still going to be awesome. Like Jason looked good in the all black and yellow Alpine Star gear. But is this a step forward for Jason for 2026, or is this a lateral move and we expect more of the same of what we saw last year?
I think this is the moment in his career where he just needed that kick in the pants.
Yeah.
And not because it's just, I think it's, and not even a kick in the pants. It's like he's been like lacking on effort, but I think just the overall mantra of just him being who he is, the environment that he's been around, particularly at Kawasaki. He won that title in 2018 on a Husky with a group that, for 80% of that season was people that he was comfortable with. They had the
Yes.
change. They had the change mid-season. And that might be, I might be wrong on that year, but I mean, I know he won the title in 18, but just when everything fell apart as far as the inner workings with that team and
Yeah,
the
the Bobby
personnel and
Hewitt
stuff.
ended
Right,
things, and
exactly.
yeah.
But he was with people that he was comfortable with, and it was a relaxed environment on everybody's end. Jason, we know he's relaxed. Bobby, he was, he brought Jason in the
Maybe a
250
little too
days
relaxed.
and had to send him home, but he didn't dump him. You know,
Nope.
he Bobby is Bobby needs to have a lot of credit, and Jason's giving it to him for how his career has gone. I think Jason's, you know, attitude or, just his overall demeanor, I don't think it really ever gelled well with Cowie. Granted, he had a handful of wins there with him a few years ago, but I just don't think that just everything that I heard, I don't know if that combination was ever really going to work to make a championship out of it. And maybe I'm wrong, and it just doesn't work out. And we've seen that a million times, and that won't be the first time that's ever happened, and it certainly won't be the last either. But I think him with Dustin Pipes and Larry Brooks, two guys that raced, they were privateers, they had good careers, they didn't have winning careers. But I think just the journeyman aspect and the journeyman mentality that both of those guys had in their careers, I think is what is going to help just have that lack of, I got to do this and I have to make this happen on all ends, where it's just going to be really relaxing for Jason, to where there's three teams in the pro pits that have two guys that are capable of putting wins under their belts for the year. And HEP Suzuki is one of those teams, one of those three teams.
Yeah, no, they are going to be like a thorn in the side of a lot of championship hopefuls. I don't have championship like expectations for either one of them, and I think that's fair. But at the same
Championship,
time,
I'd say that's fair.
yeah, championship that's fair, but also like speed and the ability to lead laps and be a huge pain in the ass for anyone who is looking for the championship on any weekend. Both of them completely capable of it, and wouldn't be surprised to see it, especially early in the season. Kenny's always so good at those early rounds.
Oh, he's always so good at the early rounds, and he's such a good starter. And his first five lap speed is just ridiculous. And him matching with Jason, if those guys can both get top five starts, they're going to stay there. I think Jason, just the way Jason rode this year in that World Supercross Championship, yeah, he's the newly crowned world champion, but just his riding was so different than what it's been the last couple of years on that Kawasaki. I think just like I said before, the overall mentality from him, and I think he's got a different confidence and just the group that he's around. I just think he's going to be in a lot better place mentally. He's going to be a lot happier. And then with Kenny, Kenny's just one of those guys that just focused. You can't break that focus from him. The only guy that's really done that on a regular basis is Webb. But just those two guys are guys that can get out front and win races. And yeah, I know the last couple years, Jason hasn't really shown that against the likes of Jett and Hunter, who we're going to talk about here shortly. But I think this
Finally.
move, yeah, I think this move is going to be something that's going to really elevate him for the next couple of years before his career's over. And I think that's what I think it's, the breaking off, the stepping off point that Suzuki is finally going to get back into that conversation on a regular basis, and especially with more than just one guy.
Right, and no longer will they have to sort of rely on like, oh, well, Ken's not on this weekend. I guess we're not going to compete, be able to compete, which has been the case for a number of weekends where like Ken's just not feeling it. Ken has a issue. Like there's weekends, absolutely. Ken Roczen has been like the fastest and most skilled athlete on a dirt bike in Supercross, even on a Suzuki. He's done that. He just hasn't been able to do it consistently. And on those weekends when Ken might not have his fastball, Jason might very well have it. And you know what? There's going to be weekends they both do.
Well, and the fact that, we had two, if you want to call them moments of surprise in 2025 last year. One of them being Malcolm winning Tampa, which just because it was a first time win, but it was great because it was in the hometown and everything. And then the second one, and I think the one that carried some bigger weight, is the fact that Ken Roczen wins Daytona of all
Mhm.
races. Just
Yeah.
if anyone was going to win Daytona, did anyone really pick Kenny to win that race? No. And he
Yeah,
went
that was
out,
right
and it's
on. That
not like
was
he,
not quite on par with when Justin Brayton won Daytona, but it's not far off.
right. Exactly. And the fact that Kenny didn't, wear down, and it's not like he had that race handed to him.
Yeah.
He got out front, everybody was there. It's not like anybody went down, and he earned that. I mean, he earned that win as much as any other win in his career.
That he did. Do you expect a race win from both those guys this year?
I definitely expect Kenny to win a race. I think if Jason's going to do it, he's going to do it within the first 7 or 8 rounds this year.
Okay.
I don't know about later into the year. Maybe I'm wrong. If he's still there and a few other guys are hurt, then the my opinion of that'll change probably.
Yeah.
But I think if Jason's going to win a race at all, it's going to be within the first half of the season.
Completely agree. Let's quickly. I hate to gloss over these guys, but we haven't seen either one of them in the top 10 in Supercross yet, or at least not on a consistent basis. I'll just ask this question plainly. Who's going to be the best beta 450 athlete? Benny Bloss or Mitchell Oldenburg?
Man, that is flip a coin. I don't even know if there's
They're going to be
a
10th and
right or
11th in
wrong.
points,
Probably.
probably.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think I'm waiting to see more out of Oldenburg.
Uh,
Honestly, just he didn't have a great year last year. I'm really
yeah.
expecting more out of him, and I don't know if that's just because of we what we saw or didn't really see out of him last year, or if it's the fact that like even though we're going back 7 years or 8 years, however long it's been, but Benny Bloss, if a lot of people have forgotten, he's gotten a heat race win under his belt
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So it's not like Benny's a slouch by any means, and neither is Oldenburg. Just it's
I really have a hard time like kind of like making sense of these guys as far as like splitting them up or like because they both have like I think that Mitchell might have a little bit more on the fastball, but we've never really seen it in 450 Supercross. We've sure as hell seen it in 250 Supercross. There was a number of
right.
years where he would have the points lead at some point on 250 West that you just can't say that about Benny Bloss. But also, have you seen Benny go through the whoops on a 450? It's like a cheat code. So like there's gonna be weekends where they're up, they're down. I don't think I've ever seen a weekend where they're both up. Definitely seen weekends where they're both down. But yeah, I think I like yeah, if I had to put money on it, by the end of the year, I might give the edge to Bloss, but as far as like total points at the end of the Supercross season, but it would be a handful. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing it.
Well, and and like you mentioned with them both having down weekends, a lot of that there was a lot of mechanical issues with those betas
Yes,
last year, and we can't put it on them. They both
not at
at
all.
numerous times last year showed great speed on the lap charts, so we can't really put that all on them. That just it wasn't happening. A lot of issues that they were trying to figure out. I think a lot of it was electrical from what I've heard.
Yeah.
And so just getting over that hump, which I think they have, I think they're in line for a lot better year. Are they going to put in top fives? No. Can they get an 8 in there? Absolutely.
Yeah, especially when we get to the end of the season when motivation as well as the attrition rate certainly seems to come into effect. I know we talked about Triumph off the absolute rip. Austin Faulkner was breaking news. But I did get a text back from Jordan Smith while we were recording this, and he says that he's shooting for Dallas as his return and debut on a 450 for the Triumph brand. We'll sort of circle back to that when we get a little bit closer to heading to Big D, whereas everyone else seems to call it the Arlington Supercross. But you fly into Dallas, so get lost.
Right.
Um, it is finally time to talk about Big Red. Team Honda HRC Progressive 450 team. It's a couple of brothers from down under. They've both won races. They've both established themselves as basically two of the biggest powerhouse team racers in at least 2025, 2026. Everyone's got to look out for the big red machine. And honestly, I don't think you can, I don't, there is not a deeper team as far as talent, ability, fitness, and than anybody but Team Honda. But also, they did have gripes about the 2025, and it is a new bike for 2026, is it not?
I think it's generally the same base as the 25. I don't think they're due for a entirely
It's a
new frame or
27
anything
bike
until
that's going to be
27.
brand new. Yes,
Right.
Ruben Fernandez was so bold as
Yes,
to race it
exactly.
at some GPs as well as more across his nations. Although you could also probably argue that he's racing that bike for more testing and knowledge basis, because I don't think Spain was really threatening to win that designations. But either way, Jett Lawrence,
Well,
he has won this
he did
championship.
ruin a $30,000 motorcycle that weekend.
Perfect. Hey, someone else is picking up the tab on that, so he's more than welcome to do so. Jett Lawrence is the baddest man on the planet when it comes to dirt bike here in 2026. He's on a familiar platform. He's been on the Honda 450 for this will be his third full season in 450. All right, breaking news, breaking news. Yeah, hey, we got to insert this, Kyle. We first did this, but we were recording this podcast 9 days ago, the 18th of December, 2025. We are now a day after Boxing Day, the 27th, and the news came out. I guess it was late last week, even. You had sort of texted me some rumblings. I did some checking around. Everyone was mum about this news, but yeah, I guess we'll insert this where our thoughts on Jett Lawrence are. It's quite late in the podcast, either way, but yeah. I guess that we did have a lot of things to say, but I guess all that can be said now is get well soon. And it is a bummer that we won't have one of the most talented men on a dirt bike racing AMA Supercross this season.
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer to the series and to the for the fans. Um, but it's we're kind of going back to where we ended up after 8-2 in 2025 after he left the series with the ACL, and there's a lot of guys that your eyes kind of open up a little bit bigger now with him being out of it, and it's going to make the series a lot more interesting. And really, before we even get started this year, at least this past season we were a handful of rounds into it before he went out, but now we're getting an entire series basically, or at least starting the series and getting at least two-thirds, if not entire way through the series with no Jett and a lot of unanswered questions that's probably won't even be answered until we get to 3 rounds from the end on who's going to win this title.
Absolutely. So before we get into how this affects the championship, let's boil down this injury a little bit. It's a talus and a navicular, and some people think of the navicular as a wrist bone. Of course, the wrist and the ankle have a lot of sort of similar structures, and as far as I know, the navicular both in the wrist and in the ankle bone is a bone that doesn't receive a lot of blood flow, not a lot of circulation. We're talking probably completely immobilized and no weight being put on this that structure, that ankle for the better part of 6 weeks. We're a week into it now, but he's got a long road to hoe, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And I broke my navicular in my wrist years ago when I was a kid, and that was a good 2.5, 3 months off. And that's when I was younger. He's a little bit older now. Granted, he's in great shape, but I would have to think that the navicular in your foot, and especially with the impact that he had, is a little bit worse. So that's at least 3 to 4 months. I would think that he's off. So that might even put the start of outdoors in question. And I mean, obviously we haven't seen any X-rays. I imagine it's the navicular that was the main reason for the surgery that he had, not so much the talus. But yeah, it's a bummer, and it's definitely not the way that you wanted to start the season or enter 2026 before the season even starts with an injury, and especially to the guy that most people were favoring as the odds-on favorite to win the championship this year.
Certainly. So, with that, I think I'll just skip ahead a little bit here. I did make Jett my title champion, or my predicted champion as far as this podcast was considered. And that's truly how I felt rolling into the season. This blows that wide open. It's going to be life without Jett for at least Supercross, I'd imagine, for 2026, which really opens up this championship. There's some guys that 10 days ago were thinking to themselves, like, am I going to have anything for that guy? And now the narrative for a lot of those guys is anyone going to have anything for me? And there's more than a couple of guys who can say that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first guy that everyone would look to, or the first couple guys, maybe 1A and 1B would be Sexton and Webb. And, Webb's the defending champion. Sexton has a lot to prove to himself just on how, like we were talking about when we first recorded this, just, he's got a lot of things to answer to for how the end of the championship went last year. But then you got Hunter, you got Kenny, a couple other guys that could get into the mix, and especially with how some of them have been riding in the off season. Malcolm is one of them. AP is another one. If he can figure out the whoops, J Coop. I mean, there's three or four more guys that just became a little bit more serious contenders for podiums, at least, if not wins, with the exit of Jett.
No, certainly. And I think a lot of people, us included, I think even with this podcast, have sort of slept on three-time Monster Energy Supercross champion Cooper Webb. Regardless of his championships and race wins and his ability to stick in there, I feel like he's always sort of doubted, always a little bit underrated. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I think like it's for me, it's the he gets out of shape in the off season every year. He just like he always balloons up, and you're like, is this guy like half retired? Is he even doing it? And then he shows up to A1. He's as serious as a heart attack. The qualifying isn't always there, but I think that also is sort of a bit of a hallmark of Cooper in the fact that he always sort of does not sweat bad qualifying. Is that like, and who's like what's like bad qualifying to a guy like Jett or Justin Cooper is amazing qualifying to some of the guys that are typically further down the row. Whereas a guy like Cooper Webb can get fifth or ninth or 12th in qualifying, and I've seen him win races later on that night.
Right. And I mean, we talked about this. I think I kind of brought this up when we initially recorded this is, a guy that, really didn't put a lot of stock into qualifying when he was racing was Chad Reed. Chad was never, I don't think, the fastest guy. I mean, certainly a top five guy consistently in qualifying, but he was never the fastest guy. But he and Webb have the same mentality. When the gate drops and, the money and the points are actually on the line, that's when it's time to get racing. Another guy that you could kind of make a similar comparison to that, was never, consistently a top qualifier. And I think, the more comparison that I bring this to is the fact that Webb has never been an early season race winner. He's never won A1. Somebody that also never won A1, but also went on five championship runs without winning the season opener ever in his career is Ricky Carmichael. Ricky never won the opening round of the series. He would win from there on out. But, one guy that we haven't brought up yet that's, we talked about when we initially recorded this, and this is more so on the bike side of things. Where's Eli Tomac going to slide into this championship if KTM can keep the rear shock from fading on him? If he can gel with the bike, he's more, and obviously he's a two-time champion of Supercross, but there's so many unknowns with him, which is why he's not getting talked about as much. I don't think it's just there's so many variables there, but yeah, I mean, I don't think, yeah, to your point, so many people sleep on Webb just because he doesn't ever show that early season, hey, I'm here. But by the time we get to round six, round nine, 10 area, when he really starts finding his momentum, that's when he's dangerous.
Absolutely. We often forget this is 17 rounds of Supercross with two off weekends mixed in, or maybe just one this year. But either way, after 10 rounds of Supercross, it's still 7 rounds to go. Lots of racing to happen. I'm actually going to leave in our top three prediction just so that people can see how stupid we truly sounded. Because I think that's a certain it has a certain level of entertainment value to it. But obviously, my championship needs to change. Let's just run it down right here and now. As far as championship contenders, I'm gonna go similar to you. You picked Sexton as your champion. I'm gonna follow you on that. I think the Kawasaki's gonna be the right recipe for him to be able to knock down a championship for the first time in 3 years now, I believe. He won the 2023 title, 22 title.
23 title.
23 title when he was on number
Yeah.
23 with Honda. That's correct. And then yeah, rounding out my top three, I'm going to put Eli Tomac and I'm going to put Cooper Webb in there. And that's no hate comms to Mr. Hunter Lawrence, but that's who I think the top three is going to be. I think it's going to be Webb. I think it's going to be Eli, and I think the top step is going to belong to Chase Sexton. What say you?
I'm going to stick with my original selection, which was Chase, but I think I'm going to slot Webb into the runner-up spot now. I think he's got a little bit different. Certainly, he's going to have a little bit different outlook going into round one this year with Jett being out. But I'm going to throw Hunter into the third spot. I think he's obviously going to have a different mentality this year. It's going to be his third year in the 450 class, but now that he's the only guy underneath that Honda truck, at least until we get to the East Coast races, with Joe being hurt, Chance being hurt, Jett being out for the season, he's the only guy underneath that Honda truck. There's going to be a lot of expectation on him, but I think he kind of thrives on that, despite the fact that he never really is the guy. He's always getting overshadowed by Jett. I think he actually is, under the radar, thriving on being the guy that everyone looks at to represent yourself, the brand, everything. But I'm going to throw him into the third spot. And for anybody listening to this that is like, well, what about Eli? I'll throw him in the fourth spot. Just he's going to be there. It's going to be 4A and 4B between he and Kenny, but they're going to get race wins no matter what. But I think at the end of the championship run, I would say Chase, then Webb, then Hunter.
Fair enough. Well, we disagree about the order of Hunter and Eli, but I think you're going to be splitting hairs by the end of the championship. You were wearing a Merry Christmas long sleeve shirt. We recorded this prior to Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, my friend. What was your favorite motocross related Christmas gift that you got as a kid?
Man, that's a tough one. There's been a lot over the years, but definitely getting gear,
Hmm.
always the race gear. That's always a big one. Never had the motorcycle, brand new motorcycle underneath the Christmas
No,
tree.
I didn't have that one either. Like, Dad wasn't stingy on me. I got plenty of bikes, but never on
Oh, same
Christmas.
here. Same here, but no, definitely gear and anything race related. The VHS tapes. I'm dating myself for the younger
Hmm.
audience. You and I both,
Revelation
definitely got the VHS
199,
tapes.
little
Yeah,
terra firma.
we got the Terra Firma tapes for sure.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Happy Merry Christmas to you. Happy Boxing Day yesterday
Yep.
up there in Canada. But yeah, good holiday season, and we're just uh we're just a couple or 2 weeks out today from going racing.
2 weeks out today. We will find out the full lineup of the 250 West. I believe not this coming week, but the week after that. What say you? We join back together on that Wednesday and break down the 250 West. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for making the time for this. This is always a lot of fun. Do not hang up, but we're gonna cut things off right there.